my name is Vince Altunez. Many of you know me as the person that's completed the Grand more times than anybody else. And I'm also the owner and president of Trail Toes. And I currently live in San Antonio, Texas, and I'm retired. And right now, all I really do is Trail Toes and all of the affiliate businesses that I have associated with Trail Toes.
Nice. Well, thanks for taking the time to chat today, Vincent. I really appreciate it.
Of course, absolutely.
Yeah, and we'll
Anything I
definitely
can do to help. Anything I can do to help out Tess and Colin in the Grand community.
for sure. And I definitely want to talk about your 5-time finish at Grand Grand, but we'll save that as a little treat later on in the episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you're the owner of Trail Toes. Do you want to give like a brief description of what it is and how it came about?
Yeah. So Trail Toes was actually came out of 2013 deployment to Afghanistan, and I was providing medical support in flying air missions in support of operations in Afghanistan. And there was a company that sold a product for foot and body care for runners that I used, but it went off the market. And while I was in Afghanistan, I decided that I needed to fill the void of the product that left the market because I used that product and loved it. And so while I was in Afghanistan, I got a hold of some manufacturers and said, "Can you make this product?" And they said yes. And so I started it again. I started it the day before my birthday, June 7th, 2013 is when Trail Toes was born. And one of the reasons we used the tag, or I used the tag, battles blisters better, is because it was actually, the company was actually formed in battle. So that's why I use that tagline.
Yeah, I'd say Afghanistan is a pretty extreme environment to be testing product.
Yeah.
Yeah, then you also did a lot of...
That's actually where I got my first product and didn't like it and sent it back to the manufacturer. So I actually did test the original product in Afghanistan.
Oh my gosh. And then from what I know, you also tested product at Grand the first year you ran it, right?
The first or second year. It was the first year that they had Grand. I keep forgetting. I think it was, if it might have been the first year, but or the second year. But anyway, so actually the reason I ended up doing testing it at Grand was because it's a great environment. Probably one of the most. I mean, I've run a lot of the stage races throughout the world, and Grand is some of the toughest terrain. I compare it to Marathon des Sables easily, if not more, if not worse, just because of all the sand and the climb and all that stuff that they have at Grand. So it just so happened that I had sent back two other samples back to the manufacturer because I didn't like them. They were too thin or they had a scent or something like that, and I just didn't want that. And so the reason I ended up taking, and I wouldn't matter what it was because I would have taken it to Grand and tried it anyway, but this happened to be the product that I got. They sent me two 2-ounce jars of a sample, and it was like a week or 2 weeks before, so I didn't have a chance to try it anyplace else. So I literally got these two 2-ounce jars of the sample, and I said, well, it's either do or die. And so I took it to Grand with me, and I used it, and actually gave it to some other people too to try as well. I didn't have much to give out, but I let other people try it, like between their legs and on their feet and stuff like that. And everybody really liked it. I used it, and I did get 2 small little blisters on the outside of my small toes, but it was nothing compared to what I could have had. And so I said that was the formula, and that's what I went with. And it's been the same formula ever since.
Yeah, your testing protocol kind of goes in, like, I don't know, it kind of goes into the face of what you're not supposed to do on race day of trying something new.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, when I give foot care classes, I always tell people, I said, I'm going to give you samples, but please don't take this sample out and use it on your first race day. But I trust it enough that now I don't, like, if somebody tries it now, I'm okay with them trying it the first time because I've done that, and I've used it on every race since 2013, and it's been used all over the world, and Ray Zahab has taken it all over the place. And, he told me that one time it was all melted and it didn't matter. He just put his finger on it and put wherever he needed. It was like water, but he still put his finger in, just slathered it where he needed it, and it worked just fine. It's been used in Arctic environments and everything else. And it's helped with not just chafing, but also with like chilblains and cracked and dry lips and stuff like that. So,
Yeah, and I guess for the people that don't know, he's all over the world all the time, right?
right.
He's done some Arctic expeditions, hot deserts, kind of everything.
Baffin Island and Death Valley and China and the Sahara Desert and stuff like that. Him and Stefano are just crazy people. Uh,
Yeah, some of the stuff that they do is just kind of mind-boggling. I feel like there's a lot of time out there.
yeah, kind of like Lisa doing the Badwater Quad and just crazy people.
Yeah, some of these people, the ideas they come up with and the execution of it is pretty insane. Like it's inspiring, but also like how do you even get these ideas to do such crazy things?
Well, Lisa's getting ready to launch something soon. I'm not really at liberty to say what it is, but she's getting ready to do something pretty badass. So, it'll be interesting to follow her. Thinking like I think it's the May time frame. So, that'll be interesting for
Yeah,
future.
that'll be fun to follow along once you figure out what it is.
Yeah,
Well, you mentioned that you teach some classes on like foot care, right?
I do. Yeah. It's
Yes.
one. So I was a university professor. I taught for the inter-service PA program for the military for 3.5 years. I taught tactical medicine for 3.5 years, and I just recently taught for 2 years, a little under 2 years, at the University of North Texas at their PA program. And I love teaching. It's one of I think as a especially as you get older and you have more experience, the best thing you can do is you pass on what you know to other people. And I'm passionate about foot care, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't do what I do. But I'm also an orthopedic PA too. So I have a doctorate of science in orthopedics from Baylor University. And so it transcends just like foot taping and things like that. It goes way beyond that. And so I love teaching the classes. And I always encourage people like, if you like, especially at Grand to Grand, if you ever want to pull me aside, and I'll sit down and go get a bunch of people together, and we can go over the first aid kit, whatever's in the first aid kit, and talk about how to use everything and when to use it and when not to use it, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the first aid kit, because you provide all the first aid kits that every participant gets, but like I've been out to Grand many, many times, granted not in the not running, but just out there filming and shooting. But like, I actually don't know what's in that kit. Could you kind of break it down for us?
Yeah, I can actually. The I used to. So I have two. Actually, I have three different first aid kits now. But the kit that I give out to every runner, along with some samples of the other creams as well. Every runner gets it. Um, but the this is a smaller first aid kit that fits nicely in your running vest or in your backpack and things like that. It's very small. And I came up with this. I always forget I always forget if it's his first name or his last name, but it's Wyatt something, either first or last name. He used to do the Colorado 200. He wrote me, he's like, "Hey, I really like your first aid kit idea, but I want something smaller for people that are doing the Colorado 200." And so I came up. I'm very good at packing. I'm a soldier, and I'm a a medical provider, and so I have to carry as much as I can in my backpack that will provide the best care for my patients with the smallest amount of equipment and the lightest weight. And so I sat down. Let me backtrack. The original first aid kit that I came up with, I when I was teaching the inter-service PA program, and I wanted to have a first aid kit. People are like, well, if you sell a first aid kit, or if you sell a foot and body cream, why do you need a first aid kit? And I'm like, well, because it's inevitable, and so I should be prepared for it. And so I do sell a larger first aid kit, and the way I came up with it was, I mean, I worked with PAs from the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, the Coast Guard, and I also worked with some doctors as well. And I walked in with a bunch of stuff and I threw it on the table and I said, "Hey, I want to make a small first aid kit. Can you guys help me?" All of these people are deployed in multiple areas throughout the world. And so we came up with, they kind of provided guidance with what I should put in the kit. And that's why the larger kit has what it has in it. And the small kit is pretty much the same thing, but just smaller numbers. And basically, the kit comes with three 10-gram packets. It used to be 7-gram packets of the original Trail Toes cream. It has two types of tape. It has a Hypafix tape, which is a retention tape, and it's usually the white tape, and a lot of people use that like on their shoulders, the smaller backs. They'll use it on their nipples and things like that. And it has some KT tape, and the reason I like KT tape is because KT tape is lightweight, breathable. It has really good adhesion, and it's good to go around toes and around the foot itself. The retention tape does too. It's just not as malleable as the KT tape is. It has benzoin swabs, 2 benzoin swabs, and what benzoin is just a skin adhesive. If you've ever cut yourself and they put steri strips on you, they usually put benzoin down first because it helps the steri strip stick, and that's what benzoin does. And there's other types of skin adhesives, but benzoin is by far the best. It has a really nice aromatic smell to it too. I like it. Some people get nauseous from it, but I really like it. It also has alcohol pads to clean the wound. It has antibiotic ointment, a triplet antibiotic ointment to put over open wounds. 2x2s. Also has a needle, sterile needle to do like trephination. And trephination just means make holes in things. And like for people with subungual hematomas or blood blisters underneath the toenail, to put little holes at the base of the toenail works really well, rather than poking a hole in the top of the skin, which is what most people do. You can trephinate or put holes in it, and that pin's for that. It also has a big safety pin, kind of for the same reason, but people generally use that just to lance the blisters. And it has another 3 by I think it's a 3 by 5 inch plastic resealable plastic bag. That's for the extra cream. Like if you didn't use all the cream, you could put it in there because the cream doesn't reseal yet. Although I'm working on getting resealable packets for the cream and or for the benzoin swab if you don't use it, because a lot of the benzoin will have extra benzoin in the packet, and so you can just if you don't use it all, you can put it back in the packet, and hopefully later on you'll have some for later use. And 2x2s, alcohol pads, antibiotic. I have to kind of do it like I pack it. Pins, needles, extra bag, benzoin, and the cream. Yeah. So that's what it has in it. And I do have other kits, and they just have more of that stuff in it. No more. There was talk about putting medication in there and things like that, but then there was worries about if somebody had a reaction to the medication. I was kind of also has a little piece of moleskin in there as well. The problem with moleskin is most people don't know how to use moleskin, and so they end up using it wrong. And we just have one little patch in there that you can use to cut around your blister and put it over the top of it, and then put KT tape or the Hypafix tape over the top of that. So
that's a little more involved than a piece of duct tape and a shot of whiskey or something.
Yeah, we would have done that though. So the larger ones, though, I'm adding things like scissors and other things as well. They're not in there just yet, but I'm trying to find the right pair of scissors that will work for them, because it's sometimes hard, like to cut the tape the way that you want it and things like that. But at least it's in there for you to have. So
Yeah, definitely. So if you could just real quick, maybe like 1 minute, like 60 seconds real quick, like what would you do like if somebody like was out on like stage 2 or 3 out in the middle of nowhere and had a hot spot? Like how could they use that medical kit to kind of alleviate some of the pain or the discomfort?
So first thing to do is sit down, take off your shoes and your socks, and let your feet air dry first. That's the very first thing to do, because if you do anything and your skin is still wet or macerated, you're really not going to do yourself any benefit. So just take like 5 minutes and let your feet air dry. It's the first thing you want to do. And then depending on what it is, if it's just a hot spot, then I might just do nothing other than put more cream over the top of it and maybe put some inside the sock as well to help, because they kind of work in concert together, and that will help reduce some of the shear forces, because most hot spots are started by shear forces. Okay. And so now if it's worse and it's a blister, it depends on the type of blister, where it is and how big it is, but I might put holes in it. And when I say to put holes in it, most people will just put one hole in it, or they'll cut the bottom of the blister. And I don't recommend cutting it, because that will lift up and become a flap. What I generally tell people to do is do a cross. So put a hole this way and through the other side, and then this way through the other side. That way you have 4 holes, and it will allow, like when you walk in pressure, it will allow that fluid to kind of spit out. And then you got to make up your mind. Generally, what I would just tell people to do is, at that point, I would just put some benzoin down. I would clean it with alcohol first. Before I put the holes in, I put alcohol down first. Then after I put the holes on, I'd put benzoin down, and then I put the tape over it. And it will depend on where it is as to which tape I would use, the benzoin or the KT tape, or the Hyperfix tape. But if it's a rounded area, like around your foot or your toe or something like that, I would use the KT tape. If it was a flatter area, I would use the Hyperfix tape.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Than a minute. Probably
it's about a minute, right? Like we'll go with averages
I
here.
have to give I'm usually a little bit more verbose, just because I think about it like in more detail. So
yeah, definitely. No, that's really interesting. I've never heard about the kind of X pattern there as far as like lancing the blister.
So a lot of times, like, it's really interesting. Like if you go do like Nijmegen, for instance, like Nijmegen is the 4 days force march in Holland, and it's, people talk about races here. 60,000 people do that event. Huge event. But like if you go to one of their medical tents, a lot of times what they do is they de-roof the whole blister. They just take it off, depending on how severe it is. And then what they do is they put layers of tape down, and they use a special, like a leukotape kind of thing, to redo the surface of your foot. Basically, is what they're doing, and that's a bit extreme for us, because we're out there for a longer period of time, and so it's that can be a little problematic if you take all the skin off. And I think the skin allows for some protection, so I always recommend that. But later on, like if it's further on in the race and you're almost done, maybe, and you're having problems, that's probably what I would recommend doing. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But I guess like before people even get to the point of having a massive blister where they have to stop their race, even temporarily, like what can people do to prevent it? Because like I see a lot of people just like, I wear this and I never have blisters. I do that. I do that. So everyone has different opinions, but like, what's kind of your view on it?
Well, I think eventually, at some point, I don't care who you are, depending on what distance you're going, at some point you're going to get chafing, you're going to get abrasions, you're going to get a blister. It's going to happen. I don't care who you are. And I think it's kind of what you just said. If you feel a hot spot, what should you do? Stop and take care of it as soon as possible before it becomes a blister. The problem is that most people will be like, it's just a stone in my shoe. I'll do it at the next rest stop, or I'll do it but by then it's too late. You already got a blister. So as soon as you feel something that's abnormal, you should stop and take a look at it. Now, everybody wants to win, but only one person wins. But if you finish, you won. So I was doing the race. I think it was Egypt. I think it was the Sahara race when I was still in Egypt. I was there, and this guy showed up. He was from like Nebraska or something like that. And I had done like 3 or 4 stage races by then. And he's like, so I'm like, have you ever done a stage race before? And he's like, no. I said, so how do you think you're going to do? He's like, I'll be in the top 3. And I said, you're going to be out by day 3. And he was out actually by day 2, because he ran so hard that he's like, I'm going to run, and I'm not going to listen to my body. And by the time it was all over with, by the second day, his feet were so bad that there was nothing to do for him. There was another guy out of Brazil, same thing. This guy was a phenomenal, like, stud. You just looked at him, and you're like, that guy's going to win. He was out by day 3, and he was so bad. He let his feet get so bad that they had to fly him to a hospital. He was on IV antibiotics for 3 days before they released him from the hospital. So listen to your body. If you feel something, it's not a stone in your shoe, brother. It's a blister forming. Stop and take care of it. I've seen guys whole feet. I was in China. Guy's foot just de-roofed from the whole, like from the distal end all the way to the heel. Just the whole thing just de-roofed. I was like, you're done. You know. So, but again, I mean, you gotta pick your poison. If you want to win, then be ready to suffer. And if you can't suffer, then stop and take care of them. I'm a slow guy. I'm an old fat slow guy. I cross a river. I'm gonna take my shoes and my socks off, and I'm gonna change into my vibrant five fingers. I'm gonna cross a river. I'm gonna stop, change up, dry my feet out, put my socks back on, put my shoes back, put a little bit more cream on, put my shoes and socks back on. I'm gonna finish. Okay, those races are expensive to leave day 3 or 4. So
Yeah, if you add up the cost per mile when you bail on day 2, it gets expensive pretty fast, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the moisture aspect, because I think a lot of people come into Grand to Grand and there's like, oh, it's the desert, so it's just dry, dusty, and hot, which it is. But also, like, Kanab can get these kind of like monsoon storms where it dumps rain. Like one year, one of the washes was flowing moderately, so people got wet. Like it wasn't dangerous by any means, but
Right,
people
right.
got wet. So, like, is that a good tactic, do you think, to remove your shoes, especially for a multi-day race, if you're going to be crossing a stream or something?
That's my opinion. I mean, why if like my friend John Sharp just went to Alaska and they showed him how to walk through water in waders. Why are you going to wear the extra or carry the extra weight, even if it is in your sled? Why are you going to carry that extra weight for having waders if it doesn't provide some benefit? If you're day 3 or 4 and your feet are already starting to break down, and then you go into water and they're macerating, you don't change out your socks, your feet are just you're going to get trench foot, and any blister or hot spot that you had is just going to get worse. So, in my that's my opinion. I mean, again, I've run, I've run on every continent except for Australia, and I've done the same thing every time. And I've never, the most I left was maybe 1 or 2 small blisters, usually on my small toes because, shoes or something like that. But, I never had any bad blisters. I've had some, under my toenails and things like that, but that's kind of inevitable, especially going downhill and things like that. You're going to get those subungual hematomas. And so, but again, if your feet are wet and they're wet for a long period of time, you're going to end up with problems. I don't care who you are.
Yeah, I guess
That's my opinion.
it's just biology, right? Like you
Yeah,
kind of can't fake out Mother Nature too much.
I mean, there are some studs out there that are just like they're phenoms, and that's not everybody. That's like a percentage of the people. Most people are going to have problems. So, but I would just say, listen to your feet, listen to your body. If you feel something that's out of the ordinary, you know, I did
Yeah,
one year I had so one year. Oh, this is kind of embarrassing, actually. So one year I didn't have problems with my feet, but I had really bad uh, butt chafing, and it was because I went to the bathroom and didn't. I cleaned myself with the wet wipes and didn't reapply cream, and I didn't listen to myself because I was almost to the stop. And by the time it was all over with, I literally couldn't wear underwear or shorts, and I had my t-shirt, I had my shirt. I was wearing it like a sarong. Is that what it's called? Like when you wear like a thing around your waist, kind of like
well,
a whatever. I don't, like a skirt. I was wearing my long sleeve shirt as a skirt because I couldn't wear pants.
oh
So
my gosh, it's embarrassing, but I'm sure we've all been in that situation before. And
it, it happens to the best of us.
yeah,
So
something that you got me thinking about, and is just kind of pacing matters in stage races so much, because it's a
yeah.
multi-day event. And like, if you're just going to run like a half marathon, you just want a PR, like that's great. And you can probably push through a blister. There's no point in stopping. But if you had to do that again the next day and the next day, and then run even longer the next day, everything just kind of amplifies and gets worse and worse. And you're not just done like the end of a half marathon.
Well, what the interesting about Grand to Grand is one of the longest days is the first day. I mean, that's the second longest day, I think, if I remember it. I think it's like 30 something miles long. All the rest of them are
Yeah.
like 26 or something like that. Other than the long stage was 50 something. But the first day, and the problem with the first day is everybody's all pumped. and it's all open. Like the first day is all open, and it's fairly flat for the most part. There's one part at the end which I really hate, the end before you go to the last rest. I just hate that. On that hill, you can see anyway, the personal things. but because every time I go there, there's rattlesnakes up in the little side of the mountain, especially by the time I get there. But anyway, but that first day is really long, and so it seems, and it's flat. So people are like, oh, I'll just fly through it. And a lot of people end up with blisters on the first day because they're like, oh, I'll be there soon. Yeah, you'll be there soon, but you got 5 more days of running. So pay attention. That's what I say. And gaiters are really important too. I think gaiters are really important. So people that don't wear gaiters are crazy.
Yeah, like personally, like I rarely wear gaiters, but that being said, if I were to run Grand to Grand, I would because of all the pokey plants and all the sand and just there's just so much out there. And if it's
Yeah.
just a single day thing, it's fine. But like when you're out there day in and day out and dirty, you need to protect your feet and your ankles as much as possible because even if those things aren't causing blisters, they're just extremely irritating.
Yeah.
And
You have to
it gets
stop and
frustrating.
clean out. Yeah, you just have to stop and clean out your shoes all the time and stuff like that. It's just a pain. So I think gaiters are really important too. So
Yeah, I would agree. And that's something like kind of off topic, but I think people should experiment with a little bit beforehand. Like, okay, I'm gonna wear my gaiters and see how they impact my feet, my ankles. Like, can I adjust them a little bit, just to kind of find the best case scenario for yourself?
well, one of the problems is that people, because they don't experiment with their stuff, you mentioned it earlier, was moisture. Like one year, one guy brought out a bunch of parachute material and was making people, homemade gaiters with this parachute material. Problem is, it doesn't breathe. And so your feet are sweating inside this parachute material. And as a result of that, you're actually you can exacerbate a problem that maybe wasn't there to begin with. And so you got to be careful what you do and how you do it and what material you use because everything matters. And like you said, I would never recommend anybody try anything for the first time on a big event like that. Um, you know, I've been doing this for a long time and I've been on, like I said, many events. And so I'm not afraid to try something new just because I trust myself and because I trust, I'm a military trained guy and, I've been in some pretty intense places. And so I trust myself to do that, but I wouldn't recommend that to everybody for sure.
Yeah, I'd say definitely stick with the old adage of not trying new things on race day.
Yeah.
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 I'm thinking about that though too. Like if you're going to use like parachute material for gaiters, like it is going to be like a humidifier on your feet all day. But
Yeah.
I guess on the same hand or the same principle, like if you're wearing, say, a waterproof shoe, it may sound good when you're at home because it's like, okay, it's going to block all the sand and all the stuff from getting in. But at the same time, your foot is going to sweat more and get hotter. You're just going to have like a little bath of, this sounds gross, but like a bath of sweat that you're running in all day again and again and again.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the other things people don't do is that they'll bring one pair of socks because they're worried about weight. They'll bring one pair of socks, and so they'll wear the same pair of socks, which is just like putting sandpaper on every single day. And so one of the things I bring a new pair of socks for every day. I change my socks every single day. And the other thing people don't, well, what they'll do is like they'll tape their feet and then they'll go to sleep in that tape. The problem is that if they had a blister, that blister is draining. There's serosanguinous drainage underneath there, and so all it's doing is staying wet all night. And so what I tell people to do is take that stuff off at night. Make sure you get up a little bit earlier and retape everything in the morning. Because otherwise you're just sitting in filth, and now it's dirty. Now it's trapped, so now you got dirt getting in those wounds and things like that. And that's going to cause problems. So
Yeah, I guess thinking about that too, like I've noticed in like the multi-day things that I've done that this sounds gross too, but it's like you're trying to save time and be efficient. So if you wear those socks and go to bed wearing those socks you've worn all day, they're damp and your feet are cold and they're just sitting like at a cold moisture all night, and that can cause issues. So it's always good to remove those socks, let your feet dry, and if you are going to put on new socks, make sure they're the dry, clean ones.
yeah. Well, or the other, if you want to be economical, what you can do is you can give up some of your water which, you're really not supposed to use your water for anything other than drinking, but you can give up a little bit of your water to clean out, like bring 2 pairs of socks, try and clean one out, let it dry, put it on your backpack and carry it that day, and then try and get all the sand out of it and switch it out that way. Like people that do like, the race across Tennessee, whatever that one is, the HOTS or whatever what's it called? Anyway, the one Laz puts on where they go from one end of
Yeah.
Tennessee to the other,
It's like a
those guys.
self-supported thing, right?
Yeah, well, you can do it
Yeah.
screwed or crude, so you can
Oh,
do it
okay. Yeah, that's
crude
right.
or you can do it screwed. Uh, but a lot of people will they'll bring 2 pairs of socks, but in those times they can go to a gas station and clean them out. They'll clean them out, and that way they at least have something that's semi-clean. So,
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense.
yeah,
Um, let's talk about like what we kind of alluded to in the beginning, that like you've ran the race 5 times now. So like
yeah,
why have you done it so many times? Like before we started recording, we were talking about how in the middle Texas is and how far away from everything it is. Yeah, you keep coming back to
yeah.
Kanab to run the race. So like what draws you in?
It's beautiful. I mean, it's some of the most beautiful terrain in America, and I've lived in I think 9 or 12 states, and I've lived in 4 or 5 countries, and so I mean, this is one of the most beautiful places on the planet. When you finish the last stage, you look down into Bryce Canyon, you see those pink cliffs and stuff like that. You just can't beat that. When you start the first day, like I always tell people like who've never done Grand today before, I say, you guys are going to go to your tents, go hang out in your tent, meet your people, go down to the go down and look into the Grand Canyon with all of your tent mates and your friends that you made in the hotel the night before and stuff like that. But at some point, go by yourself and just sit on the rim of the Grand Canyon and look down. Watch as the birds fly up into your face from down below. It's transcended. It's really like it's spiritual almost. And I'm not like that. There's no atheist in a foxhole, they say, but to me, it's one of the most, I don't know, enchanted places is probably a really good word to use. And when you finish, like I said, the first day when you finish this stage one, when you're before you have to climb that miserable hill, go left and then go right towards the camp. That takes forever to get there. And for me, it's the end of the day. But you see the different rock formations, the white and the pink, and the cliffs where the condors live and stuff like that. It's really beautiful, and it's hard. I mean, it's still in the top 10 hardest races on the planet, and it was actually named that the first 2 or 3 years it was in existence. They realized how difficult it was, and I I think because it's the United States, you don't have to deal with customs. You don't have to deal with visas. You don't have to deal with people looking at your food and going, "Oh, you can't take." Like the first time when I did China, the first stage race I ever did, I had taken a bunch of food and I used a bunch of MREs because again, I was my first race. I didn't really know and blah blah blah, but my food never made it. So I had to borrow food from people from like England and stuff like that, and they eat food different than us. And I'm just like, it was hard for me to finish that race because I didn't have food that I knew. But if anything happens in Kanab, you can go to there's 2 big grocery stores there. You go buy what you need at the grocery store. There's a camping store there. So if anything happens, you can always like figure it out, because you're still in America. And it's when you leave America and go do a race someplace else, it's a whole different animal. And two of the other biggest reasons are Colin and Tess. Obviously, I mean, Tess is always out there, and Colin's always gives a good brief, and then of course the volunteers are awesome. They always take really good care of you. And where was I at? I was in Atacama, and I asked for a bottle of water because I had just given a bunch of my water to a guy who ran out, and I helped him get to the aid station. I was in Atacama and I asked for an extra bottle of water because I'd given most of my water away. And the guy said, "We don't have any." And there was stacks of water. I could see them. And I'm like, "Look, you give me a bottle of water now." And the guy literally threw the bottle of water at me. Literally threw it at me. And I'm like, I paid $3,100 to be here, and you're throwing water at me because I gave water to somebody else. That's never happened at Grand Grand. Never. I mean, if you need it, they're going to give it to you. And so, I think the volunteers are awesome. The area is beautiful. The race director puts on a great race. They always have the event, on the after the long stage where they bring out like cowboys and stuff like that. That's kind of cool. They have different events every year. The pre-race, post-race are good. I'm glad though, because this used to bother me. We used to finish the race, like the first few races they had, we used to finish the race and have to go all the way back to Vegas for the after party. And you're riding this bus for like 4 hours, it seemed. I don't even remember. It was a long way, but you just stink. But now they do it in Kanab, which to me makes much more sense. And I think it brings, helps out the Kanab economy and stuff like that. So,
Yeah, plus you have a way shorter bus ride and you can take a shower.
Yeah. Well, I just remember Kenny and I were sitting next to each other. I could smell Kenny, and how Kenny could smell me. But I was just like, I had to put my head out the window at one point. I'm like, Ken, you stink bad. So, yeah.
Oh man, yeah, you're
And the
pretty gnarly.
people, but there's people like Louise and Garth and, the Jar of Hope guys, James Raffone and Rick, and there's Leanne, and obviously, there's the rival between Gary and myself, Gary Jackus, whether or not he's ever going to catch me. It's a smaller community. Like, when you talk about stage racing, like if you look at runners, like 5K guys, and then there's half marathoners, marathons, people don't do not a lot of people do ultras, and very few do stage races. And so it's a very, very small community. And to go back and see the same people, I've run with people in Egypt. I've run with people that I ran with Egypt. I've run at Grand Grand with. People that I met in China, I've run at Grand Grand with, and stuff like that. So, it's a small community, and it's a great community because it's a completely different mindset. Stage racing is a much different mindset than even a 100 mile, and I've done a bunch of hunters too. So, but it's a totally different mindset when you've got to pack all your stuff and know that the only way you're going to get across that finish line is because of you. No pacers, none of that. So, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, it
And I've
truly
paced.
is.
I've crewed a bunch. Like I crew almost every year out of Badwater and other places, and so it's a much different when it's all you. It's different.
Definitely. And like just as we wrap up here, I think that's kind of the cool part about running is like if you want to run like 400 meters on a track, that's great. If you want to run stage races, that's great. There's kind of room for everybody and everybody's
Right.
personalities, and you
Right.
can always test yourself if you want to start running short stuff or long stuff or stage races. You can always find something that will test you truly, and
Yeah.
it's a really cool community too, like you're saying. So
Yeah. That's absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
yeah, well, thanks, Vincent, for your time. I really appreciate it. It was interesting
Yeah.
to hear. Like, kind of grossed me out a little bit about the blisters and everything, but that's why I don't work in the medical field.
I could tell you more stories than that though. But
Oh,
yeah. So and I will be at Grand Grand this year for the sixth time because I got to stay here ahead of Gary. And if anybody is watching this, if they want advice prior to Grand Grand, you're more than welcome to contact me on my website, trailtoes.com. Just go to the contact page, and if you have questions or if you want to do a one-on-one phone conference or something like that, I'm more than welcome to do that or willing to do that with anybody. I work with Band of Runners, and we just put on a big blister class for Band of Runners and stuff like that. And so it's something I'm passionate about, and anything I can do to help, obviously, I'm here for. So,
awesome. Thanks, Vincent.
yeah,
Appreciate that. And we'll have to chat
of course.
soon. I guess we'll see you in September, though.